we've all said the benefit of a great company culture. We all know, like, oh, the great company culture. Oh, this culture is the best. But then what happens when your tiny little company culture is sat next to the world and Instagram and TikTok and news outlets and whatever, Facebook, social media, whatever it is? How are you supposed to create a biosphere in which you've created a culture that does allow that to flourish, that does allow people to have open dialogue and open debate within the biosphere? Because the second that they're out of the biosphere, they need a hazard suit to
Yeah.
walk around if they want to do that.
Welcome to Leadership Disrupted. I am really excited about today's conversation. And I know I always say that, but I can't even say I really mean it this time, because that seems to mean that I don't really mean it the other times. I do really mean it the other times, and I really, really mean it this time. So I asked Nolan Hout to join me for this conversation because Nolan is what I would refer to as a younger leader. He's a couple of decades younger than I am, but he's been in the workplace a few decades. So he's in that mid zone, and he's got experience leading up, leading down, leading remotely, leading a diverse team. And I think there's just a lot to discuss that's going to be interesting for both of us, and also hopefully interesting for you, the listener. So Nolan, first of all, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for immediately calling out what used to be my biggest fear, was managing up. I remember I was managing people before I could rent a car. And I always thought, like, I'd go on sales trips or client visits or whatever. And I always thought, like, there's a box that says, are you 26 years or older? And you have to, like, click it or not. And I was not clicking that box for like the first several years. And it was a good reminder every time I went. I'm like, reminder, you are the youngest guy in this room, and so you better prepare yourself for that. But yeah, thank you.
So you've seen the world of work pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and I can't always put my finger on it, but I know it's two different worlds. Even though we've come out of the pandemic and we're no longer wearing masks, and we've gone from all remote work to maybe 30 or 40% remote workers, and then the rest are in office. So a lot of hybrid workers. But you could say from some people's perspective, we're back to normal, but it doesn't feel normal to me. It doesn't feel like we're back. There are so many aspects of our world that have shifted. And I guess, let me ask you, how would you contrast pre-pandemic work world and post-pandemic work world, and then the world of just leading in this environment versus the pre-pandemic?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, when I started at InfoPro 15 years ago or so, there's three of us in that office. One of them happened to be my brother. And so it wasn't like we had a huge office, but we came in every single day. There wasn't ever even a thought of not coming in, right? Like, it was just, and it was rare that we really engage with each other much. I'd hang out with my brother after work instead of during work, that kind of thing. But then I remember, and everybody I worked with was remote, right? So we have a big office in Jersey, a big office in London, a big office in India. So in the office, but lots of remote people.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in Utah. It just wasn't really my family had all moved into different places. Nobody was there anymore. And I called up my boss and I said, I'm sorry. I love this company to death. I just can't work here anymore. And my boss goes, why? And I said, I don't love Utah. I'm going to move. And he goes, well, where are you moving? And I said, Seattle. And he goes, okay, I'm about to step into a meeting. Let me call you back. He goes, okay. He calls me back, says, hey, there's a lot of business in Seattle, probably much more so even than Utah. Just go work from Seattle. And like, at the time, that point I was 24, I think. I was literally putting my paper. It was
Mhm.
such a non part of the conversation that I just quit I like fired myself so that I wouldn't have to be fired, for that reason. And so I like, although I wasn't in a huge office, I know what that world was like. But then I worked by myself,
Mhm.
remote for years, and then we ended up getting an office in Utah, Seattle, and hiring a lot of people, and that became its thing. And so, like, I really have gone, and then we had the bigger office and had a lot of people. I feel like the the reason that nobody feels like we're back to normal is I just don't feel like there was ever a normal date. We know when it
Yeah.
wasn't normal, right? Like March 2020, like we just know. All of us probably have some event in our mind of when we would say it
Mhm.
started, sometime around March 2020, I'm sure. But nobody would tell you when it ended, because not only did it kind of end once and then kick back up in a major way, it got replaced with something else or something bigger or some other volatility or some war or some culture change or whatever it was. And so it just seems like, yes, we kind of returned, but to say it's normal, I don't think has ever really, it's not a word that I hear that
Yeah.
often. I don't think I've heard the word, yeah, things are back to normal. I don't think I've heard that since 2020. Like,
And it probably reflects the broader social culture outside of the world of work as much as the world of work.
absolutely.
I think there was a time maybe, and this is my perception, where corporate culture was somewhat separate from societal culture. You could
Yeah.
focus on, hey,
Yep.
we're going to create a culture of belonging, inclusion. Everybody's in this together, no matter what was happening in the outer world. But it seems like that barrier has gotten really fuzzy. It doesn't exist at all, where the world culture comes into the workplace, like it or not. Society comes into the workplace, like it or not, for good, for bad, for whatever. And so, if people are under stress, if people are under tension, um, if you hear about the K-shaped economy, where it seems like the affluent are doing really well right now, but the other two-thirds of most people are the other side of the K, uh, not doing so great. That disparity makes its way into the workplace in terms of attitudes and frustrations and just general generally how we view leaders, how we think about leaders. um,
Yeah, I mean,
and
there was a time where you could go to a Coldplay concert and wrap your arms around the head of HR, and nobody would say a word
was
about it.
there I think that that's maybe one consistency in terms of on the don't, like when you went to the HR
Yeah,
seminar and
yeah.
they showed you the poster and they said, good touching, bad touching. You touch here, don't touch here, hug here, don't hug here.
Oh,
Um, and I think that was always on the don't list. Um, I, I I also, because I'm not a natural hugger, I've always been like in the don't hug camp. But I do remember the days when I worked in a particular environment where there were a lot of women, and it was a very hugging culture. And
yeah,
I was trying very hard to be not standoffish. I didn't want people
yep.
to, but hugging is very complex, and it's gotten more complex today. But I digress. You mentioned March of 2020, and I'm gonna take the conversation off on a different tangent just briefly, and then I'm gonna bring us
Yeah.
back only because in March of 2020, I had been uh, laid off from my previous job, and I was in my job search mode. And there's a reason I remember this so well because
Mhm.
I had known for 18 months that my previous job was going to ramp down. The HR team did really well by me. They were very fair. And so I had prospects lined up. I was doing interviews. Life was really good, and I had four specific final interviews. Like the final interview where like everything seems good. You're coming in to just dot the I's, cross the T's, and
Yep.
make sure everyone is okay. And I remember I was on my second of those four, and I was up in a tall building. I came down, got in my car, turned on the radio, and heard the news about COVID, something about COVID
Mm,
expanding into the US. And
mm,
within 2 weeks, all four job offers, the soft offers, had been rescinded, and the world
mm,
changed very rapidly for me. We're suddenly feeling like absolutely hopeful, lots of things going on, and to nothing. Now, luckily for me, that was within months. Then I came across the InfoPro opportunity, and and then it's been cool. Actually, now that I look back, it worked out really well for me
yeah.
because this has been the last 6 years. This has been really a great ride so far. But that sense of impending doom, where suddenly on the radio you're told, "Hey, bad stuff's happening." It's like that scene from the movie Ghost, where what's the line? Molly, you in danger, girl. It, and Whoopi Goldberg when
Whoopi
she's trying,
Goldberg to
yeah,
Demi Moore.
yes, and I felt the danger. But the world of work today um, feels kind of brittle. Like, we've had recently in the news examples of people who've kind of blown up at each other, and things have spiraled downwards really, really rapidly. And I do feel like there's like a low level stress in a lot of people, and it doesn't take much for that stress to suddenly blow out. And think, like, recently in the news there was Scott Pelley of CBS News and his new boss, Nick Bilton, I think is the name. And Scott Pelley was not happy. There was a meeting. Scott
Mm,
Pelley kind of blew up at his boss. The boss didn't blow up in the meeting, but afterwards fired Scott Pelley. And it seemed like that just really blew up really fast. And I
mm.
was thinking about that from a leadership perspective, thinking, you hope with a great leader, uh, coolness prevails, like cool heads prevail. That a leader
Yeah.
facing an employee who is blowing up, even if the employee says things that are overheated, uh, unreasonable. I mean, haven't we for at least 2 decades, I think, haven't we been teaching each other um, to have difficult conversations, to have, whether it's the fierce conversation program, the crucial conversation program, managing difficult conversations, elevating difficult conversations. There are so many programs, and they all teach the same thing, which is essentially, when you find yourself in the middle of a heated conversation, master your emotions, um, listen carefully, find ways to cool down the heat so that you can have productive tension, not unproductive tension. And it doesn't require both. One person on one side of that kind of conversation can manage the productivity of that conversation, but we're seeing examples uh, in lots of places where neither of the heads are cooling or prevailing. Are you seeing that in the workplace, or do you have a sense
Yeah,
of
and
that
I
brittleness?
have I have like I think that's what's happening, but there's a real problem that's come out of it, which I'll try to find a way to touch on both, but definitely I feel that there's this sense of um we're just not able to really talk to each other in a way where it is constructive.
Yeah.
Like you said, it kind of, and I try to think about it. I think about it quite a bit, because I feel like people like can take so much, and like what we talked about earlier, I do wonder if it's just something of, I don't know if it's a people's brittleness or there's just one, it's the straw that broke a camel's back for some people, where they have got so much going on outside of the world. There is so much noise that when Nolan comes knocking and says, like, hey, I just want to talk to you a little bit about this
Mhm.
thing. It's not a big deal with this, that, and the other. And then to see a blow up, um, it doesn't make sense. I can't really rationalize it. And
Yeah.
so I've been with InfoPro for 15 years. Many of the people that I've hired have been with me for more than a decade. And I have seen them change. I have noticed that they have gotten shorter or more temperamental or whatever it is. And it really stifles a lot of creativity in my opinion. But like what you said, what I found the answer to that is to it can be really like you can be the cooler, right? Like
Yeah.
you can be the person that takes all the heat and you just absorb it all and let it go off wherever you can. And I had these ladies on a podcast of mine, and they were saying they were talking a lot about the relationship between a manager and the person that they manage, and they said, the manager has to manage, down with everything. The people they manage, they can emotionalize and gift and say things up, but you can never go back down. Like it is not a two-way street, nor should it ever be a two-way street. And I really thought about that, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of I understand that idea that if you are the cooler head, it doesn't have to be cooler heads prevail. You can be the cooler head, and the average ends up
Yeah.
being somewhere in the middle. And I'm fortunate enough, I grew up, I've got 3 brothers, 2 older, 1 younger. We're all within, a couple of years of each other. Not the best kind of household. So, when COVID came, I was like, COVID schmovid, like this is the best you got. You know what I mean? Very few people will get this, but there's this thing called freezer milk. When you can't have a lot of money, you got to get stuff from like a Bishop storehouse or things like that.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of ways to conserve it is they freeze it. And when you unthaw a gallon of milk, it unthaws from the outside to the inside. So you're never actually drinking milk. You're drinking like water with a little bit of milk. So,
Yeah.
it's like a combination of the skimmis milk you can get and pure concentrated milk at the bottom. But like, so I think that's why, or maybe, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see those that have had maybe a little bit more of a tumultuous path leading up to some of these things to just check in on like, how are they doing? Or, have they been able to be more resilient because of those
Mhm.
things? Or I could definitely see how some people would finally tip them over the edge, right? Like it's one just too many. But I think coming back to like the brittleness of it, I mentioned, it stifles creativity. What really I think is the big problem, and I was telling you before we started here, I've really wanted to write an article or post a topic or something about this book called "The Emperor Has No Clothes."
Mhm.
And for those that haven't read it, like the long story short, and Dan, you correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been long time, but like the king this guy comes and like cons the king into buying the best thread in the world, and it's actually invisible, but he knows that nobody in the kingdom is going to laugh at the king because the king will have them beheaded. So kind of the joke is the emperor has no clothes, but the people are too afraid to say something, and then at the end I think a little boy like laughs at him, and then
And then they cut off the little boy's head. I think
they
is
cut
that.
off the little boy's head. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's
as you
how it
should.
ends.
As you should. And so, but I what stopped me is I'm like, well, I'm not trying to make it like a political thing, but I do think that we really value genuineness in people. And like a good way to show you're genuine is like ability to like laugh at yourself or to make fun of yourself or to like call yourself out. Like if you call
Yeah.
yourself out, you've opened the door up for other people to call you out, other colleagues to call you out, or whatever it is. Be the first one, throw a stone at yourself before you start throwing, somewhere else. And I think that we've kind of, and I think, unfortunately, it didn't end, I think, the way that anybody wanted, but the correspondence dinner in the US is always a really good moment for the society to kind of take a step back and allow the correspondence dinner, they come in, the president usually comes up and roasts a little bit of the journalists, but also people roast them.
Yeah, and all in a like a good natured, I'm poking you
Yes.
in the ribs sort of way. I'm speaking truth to power ever so lightly, and we all have a nice laugh, and then we go home and we're fine. Yes.
Yeah, and so it was I always felt like it was kind of a nice reminder to just see these viral clips of, our president being poked at. And again, we
Mhm.
couldn't have one this year, but that kind of thing I think is really important. So I think when you have like a fragile, or more fragile, more brittle, or just maybe more stressed society, combined with this like inability to laugh at yourself, or prevents these situations where leaders are running around naked and nobody's saying anything.
Yeah, man, yeah, I think you're right. And when you look at how people are being trained by social media, on social media, you don't have a lot of self-deprecating humor. I mean, there's some, there are
Yeah,
there are
yeah, yeah,
some, but mostly it's slamming people, slamming products, slamming positions. And it's pretty edgy and raw. A couple of weeks ago, somehow I started watching an old roast, back in the Dean Martin
yeah,
days,
yeah, yeah,
Dean
yeah.
Martin, and I watched it on YouTube, and it was so mild. It was mild and still, fun and entertaining, but it was, easy to watch. There was no cringing. And then you contrast that with roasts today, and it
Yeah.
just takes your breath away. I mean, they go for the throat, and it's just brutal. And I feel like on some level, socially, we've been trained to be more harsh and brittle. Um, you look at news media, you look at um, everything from like news opinion leaders, especially podcasters on the news, who gets your attention. And I'm going to try to avoid saying names, because if I say
Yeah.
one name, it's gonna trigger people on the right. If I say another name, it's going to trigger people on the left. So even I'm finding myself saying, I feel like I I can't say Candace Owens is nuts, because
Yeah.
if I do, it's going to drive some people crazy. But can we be honest with each other?
Yeah.
Candace Owens is nuts. I mean, it's just, or I mean, and now I have to think of another name but it's like that's what gets clicks. That's what drives engagement. And it seemed, I wonder, like when I went to high school, I learned debate. And in debate, you listen to the other person's argument and you respond to the other person's argument, and you apply critical thinking skills. And it's a way to learn how to engage with somebody who disagrees with you. That just feels out the door. It is truly, we dial up fast, and then we respond with emotion, and then real people get hurt. I mean, I've seen situations recently where I don't have to decide who's right or wrong. Like an employee overreacts to something a boss has done or said, and then the boss, instead of taking the heat, like you said, overreacts, and
Mhm.
then the employee overreacts even further. Bam, 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 and by the time we're done, generally the person with the power, causes the other person to have to go away. So people do get hurt um, by that dialing up. But I'm seeing a lot more of it. And I'm going to go back to something I said previously. I think the reason it strikes me is because I've been seeing training on managing difficult conversations for 20 years. It's like one of the most popular topics of training, crucial conversations.
Yeah.
The training ain't working, or if it's working, it's not working well enough, or it's not widespread enough.
Well, something that I've heard you talk about, so I want to make sure you have the credit for it, but I'm going to bring it up, is that I feel like there's this idea that you put out there, and I agree that we started the podcast, I think, talking about like this idea of the the culture's climate, has
Yeah,
kind of integrated into the business climate. And I think that's caused a lot of havoc. Like it used to be you kind of had one or the other, but you kind of are allowing both worlds to live harmoniously. And it doesn't give you that outlet to like say, really,
yeah,
how are we supposed to be having these conversations? And like we've kind of and I think we've all said the benefit of a great company culture. We all know, like, oh, great company culture. Oh, this culture is the best. But then what happens when your tiny little company culture is sat
Mhm.
next to the world and Instagram and TikTok and news outlets and whatever, Facebook, social media, whatever it is? How are you supposed to create a a biosphere in which you've created a culture that does allow that to flourish, that does allow people to have open dialogue and open debate within the biosphere? Because the second that they're out of the biosphere, they need a hazard suit to
Yeah.
walk around if they want to do that.
Now, I don't think that I can say it used to be better, because I think what was more common in the past, maybe again 10 or 20 or more years ago, was that employees in general kept hot opinions to themselves. They would not speak truth to power. They would not speak up to say, "Hey, Mr. Boss, Mr.
Yeah.
Supervisor, that doesn't make sense to me. I have a different point of view." That really wouldn't happen. So we spent a lot of time encouraging employees to speak up, encouraging young people to share their truth, to
Yeah.
share their point of view. And hey, it turns out the message really took, because now what I hear from middle-aged leaders is, yeah, they're not only sharing their truth, but they won't shut up. And when I say jump, they don't say how high. They
Yeah.
ask, tell me why. Like, what are you hoping out of this? What's the goal? What's the purpose? Like, what do you
Yeah.
want to have happen? And I want them not, I would prefer, I heard a leader say this to me directly. He said, I I want people who are motivated to prove themselves to me, like to over compensate and do more than expected, not just do what's expected. But he said that doesn't happen anymore. They
Uh,
they will
yeah,
share,
it's
absolutely.
easier. I will tell you, it was a lot easier when people just did what I said, and it was
Mhm.
like in fear. And I'm not anybody that knows me knows that like fear and me are not really like I don't have that side of me that comes out.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, like just the natural fear of your manager and your boss, like natural kind of thing,
yeah,
that has definitely gone away. But I honestly like there's still people in our organization and others that don't understand that and they want to continue to kind of push that. And I I think it's the lazy. I think it's lazy. I do. I do think that do what I told because I told you to is okay. But if you don't have a good answer, that's on you. Like I have found that it's forced me to be a lot better leader. And it does force me to slow down and know my business a little bit
yeah.
better to be able to convince somebody. I got to convince them to do it. Like it's not like a go do this. It's well, okay. If I want to convince my team that this is important, how am I going to do that? Like I need to know that my craft really, really well. And it's like in no ways am I trying to say the people that work for me are like kids, but like with my kids, they'll ask me questions. I don't know the answer and I'll try my best to answer, but then I'll also say like, "Hey, this is what I think, but I really don't
Yeah.
know. Go look up how much the sun weighs." Um, and I wonder if that's why some leaders might be struggling now, is they're kind of fighting against this idea of what I say should go, but then also struggling that when people actually have a good, hey, well, tell me why you're going to do this so that I can kind of get on board. And they don't know. And they're kind of embarrassed to say they don't know, or they're embarrassed to say, I see this all the time with these AI conversations of like, well, I don't know where it's headed. Or like, I don't think I need to know this as the manager. I'm like, bullshit.
Mhm.
What do you mean you don't need to know this as your manager? You expect your people to use it, don't you? Like, and so I don't know. I don't know if it's I'm sure that those threads are all connected, but in particular, and I have to admit, I love the style of that, of just being honest with people and saying like, this is what I think, this is what I don't think, this is where I think your future is as an employee, this is where I don't think it is. And then again, them like pushing back, why aren't we doing this? Well, I don't know. Let me like think about it a little bit.
I have a team based in India. Um, that I work very closely with. And for my first, I would say 2 years, I was a new leader for them. So they were naturally a bit cautious, but then also culturally,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think culturally they tended to view me as the leader. So if I have work direction, if I have thoughts and ideas, um, they tended to align with those ideas, agree with those ideas, validate those ideas. And honestly, it felt great. It was fantastic because every idea I had was insightful. Every direction, everything was great. And I spent a fair amount of time feeling great about myself. Like I am really good at this. And
Yeah.
even when I would say to them, "Hey, tell me how might I improve? Like what could I do to do a better job for you?" The answer was all very self. I was the emperor with no clothes,
Yeah.
and then at a certain point, I started to realize, wait a minute. Now nobody can be that smart. Nobody can be that good. And I remember there was a particular training program we were working on, and I was working on the instructional design team. And my gut told me that this particular program needed enhancement, needed improvement. And whenever I would suggest an idea, it would get validated and executed. But I wasn't the
Mm.
subject matter expert. I wasn't the right
Yeah. Yeah.
person
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
making these calls. And then I started to realize, oh, this is the downside when people are simply validating you, when they're simply making things okay for you. And I had to really work with that team to draw out from them the comfort, like to be comfortable calling me on my own stuff, calling me on my bad ideas, advocating for their own thoughts and ideas. And there was a point, I forget, this goes back a couple of years, where I had an actual argument with someone on my team, and she was very vociferously defending her point of view. And I thought that was great. That was
Hmm.
fantastic. Finally, we had broken
You've
through
gotten where
where
you
she
need
felt
to.
comfortable saying, "You're wrong. This is an error. We need to make a change. And even though you feel strongly about this, it's not correct." And
Mm.
but it took us a lot to get to that point. And I can see how leaders who are so used to being validated, when suddenly there's a new generation at work who they don't respect the title. They don't just tell you what you want to hear. They don't just jump because you said jump. Um, that can be tough when suddenly they present an alternate opinion or thought. And then, especially if they present that opinion poorly. Like if they, back to the Scott Pelley situation, I would say, Pelley had grievances, had authentic
Yeah.
grievances, and probably didn't present those in the most productive way possible. But you would hope that he would be presenting those to a leader who would realize, okay, there's a lot going on inside of you. I don't want this 5 minutes or 10 minutes to define our relationship or your career. So I'm going to be the cooler head that prevails. But unfortunately, in that situation, that's not what happened. In fact, it was just the opposite. Hothead, getting hotter, and then eventually Pelly gets fired.
Yeah. And that's where I think the leadership is most important. Is I think that, if we want to talk about like having a conversation, I loved that you brought this idea up. I really do. I support you. I'm glad you don't just see something and say, yeah, I'll do it blindly. However, instead of saying, Nolan, you're an idiot for thinking that, I'm never going to do that. The way that you should have said it was this. And but like what you said, I think what happens, my my more common experience, outwardly looking, is just the instant, like, you're fired for saying that, like, you're an
Yeah.
idiot, that idea was bad, you were bad. Like I don't know. I don't know how you and your wife are. I don't know if this podcast knew that you were married or not. So single ladies, if this was some, sorry, Dan's taken, and so am I for that matter. So,
True.
um, uh, good for you, I would probably say. You're better off. So, but I talk a lot with my wife about. I feel like in relationships, there's a couple types of people that you encounter. There's some people that where the husband gets worked up, the wife will kind of bring it down a little bit, and you
Hmm.
end up kind of in the middle, and that's your kind of group reaction. There's other relationships I've seen where, the husband gets upset and the wife just let me also now explain why I think this
Hmm.
person in your family is the worst person your mom is the worst. I can't believe she's the worst. She's even worse than you're saying she's the worst. And then you never end up talking to your mom again for like the next 30 years. And I feel like in relationships, I tell my wife, I feel like the healthiest relationships I see are when the husband or the wife are allowed to get really worked up, but the other person like is able to bring things back to like a central point to say, like, yes, I want to support you. And I do understand that's frustrating, but it's also this person. And as you said, like the I believe, and I think I heard you believe, like the person to do that is a leader. Like it's expected for it to happen from people that you don't manage yet. They don't have those experiences. Like it is your job in this relationship, this co-working relationship, to always be the leveler. Like that is
We
your
have a
role.
language for that. We call that the bigger person. Be the
Yeah.
bigger person, and you hope that the leader will be the bigger person who will. Now, it doesn't mean you have to absorb it and then stuff it all down
Yeah,
and
of
and turn
course.
it into cancer. No, but there's a way to process it. Although I have to stop. I'm not sure I'm getting quite the message. So, what are you saying about your wife?
That she's the best.
Okay, that's what I
Duh.
thought.
Did you not get that?
Uh, Good. That's excellent to
Shout out
hear.
to Marjorie.
And but I think that uh, in most workplace conflicts, it's dangerous when both people go crazy at the same time. And if you recognize, okay, the other person is going a little crazy right now, maybe that's your trigger or your signal to say, okay, I have to find my sanity. I need to be the bigger person, even if you're reporting up, even if it's your boss, whether it's reporting up or
I'm gonna
down.
interrupt you. Something you
Go
talked
ahead.
about, and I don't want to lose it. And I think it's important because it's something I grapple with. And you said like you can't just shove it all down in a box and get cancer. What is a good outlet? Like I actually brought this up to these people on my podcast that said, managers just always absorb. And I was thinking back to this post I saw about a person and unfortunately there's been one too many of them where the CEO gets on a Zoom call in complete tears. Sorry, I got to lay off 100 people. And then the employees all say, how dare you? We're the ones getting fired. You're not allowed to cry.
Mhm.
And I myself like struggle a lot with that of like, what is the right thing to do? I'm like, where I ended up, where I end up, I should say, is like, I don't get the ability to cry. Like, I hate losing. It makes me want to cry. Like, I've had to let people go, and it really, I mean, I cried before, I cried after, but I like told myself, this is your payment. Like, you, you have to own this emotional
Uh-huh.
turmoil so that they can react how they want to react. Like, anyway, so not necessarily asking where you stand on that, but more like what is a healthy outlet? And this might be a more personal question, maybe than like a leadership question, but as a leader, where do you stuff it? Like, who do you go to?
Well, I'll give you two thoughts. I don't know that these are answers, they're just thoughts. One is in that moment, reminding yourself that this moment is about them, it's not about me. And
Yeah.
sometimes, if I'm over emoting, it makes it really clear I'm caught up in my own feelings.
Yeah.
I'm not really empathizing with them. Like the
Yeah.
leader crying is not about empathy for them. The leader crying is about, his
Correct.
own
Yeah.
emotions.
Good point. Yeah.
Um, but I have become a big, big proponent of mindfulness meditation. And
Hmm.
and I meditate 30 minutes a day, uh,
Hmm.
most of the time at the start of the day, not always. And I even did a podcast a few weeks ago with a gentleman named Aaron Hendon, who is a mindfulness coach.
Hmm.
And what he persuaded me to do, to think through, was we live in a world of, right now, this is not the world we were designed for. This world of technology
Yeah.
acceleration, cognitive overload, AI overwhelm, misinformation, disinformation, um, so many people, such a fast pace, so many to-dos,
Hmm.
OKRs, KPIs, that just so much happening. This is not, we were designed to pick berries. We were
Hmm.
designed to apply our brains to recognize those mushrooms are poisonous, those mushrooms are good, and let's eat the good ones. So our brains were not designed for all of this. And so a bit of mindful meditation can give our minds a chance
Hmm.
to let go, a chance to process. And I'll leave it at that. I mean, you go on to YouTube and just search mindful meditation, and there's
Yeah, I
plenty.
used Mindspace for a little bit, and I loved it. I really did. I don't know why I got out of it. I mean, I should probably just get back into
The
practice, but it
world the
really did
world
help.
gets you out of it. The because
Yeah.
it does take time. It's that 30 minutes. That's 30 precious minutes, and it's hard to find 30 minutes. And there are days where I struggle to actually do that, but I'm getting a, a lot of benefit from it. And I know I have to catch myself because I do have a bit of uh, an intellectual temper. When someone says something that I think is stupid, or someone says something that I vehemently disagree with, or when someone says something that's inconsistent. So I'm going to give you an example. I had an example that just happened today, and I'm going to tell on myself, and I feel bad. So
For
Shannon,
yourself?
I know I feel bad for the other
For the
person.
person you wronged.
Yes,
When
who's
when are you now bringing up your wife, when are you gonna admit to your wife that you were wrong? Is that
no.
later in
Well,
the
this is
podcast?
this is not about my wife.
Oh,
This is
okay.
about someone that I work with whose name rhymes closely with Shannon, and um, um, she sent out an AI generated summary of a meeting, and you know how
Yeah.
oftentimes, and this is a meeting that she had with somebody. She sent a summary to a group of us, and you know how when it produces those summaries, it says generated by AI, um, uh, confirm this is
Yeah, check
valid.
for whatever, yeah.
Yeah, check for, well, now if you're the only person who's in the meeting and you
Yeah.
send this summary to a group of people, there's only one person who can check the validity. That would be you. So
Yeah.
it's like a pet peeve of mine where when someone sends that out, I think they should check for validity, and then you remove that line because you checked it for validity. It's such
Mm.
a little thing, such a
Yeah.
little
Very
thing.
little thing.
And but it caught me at the wrong time. I was under a little bit of stress. And so she sends this out, and I send her a little snarky
Mm.
response. And honestly, I shouldn't have done that. I felt bad about it. And by the time I was going back to try to delete it, I could see she'd
Yeah.
already read
She had
it.
already been
So then
seen.
it's too late. And then it looks lame if someone reads it and then you delete it. That's like doubly lame.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like on a daily basis, there are these little micro moments where I need to manage my own emotions much more effectively. Um, I could have just let it go, or if I felt like it needed to be addressed, I could have addressed it with Shannon in a different way at a different time. Now, luckily, Shannon kept her cool and she replied with a little bit of
Yeah.
humor, and so all is good. But that could have easily been a bam, 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 bam
Yeah.
situation.
There's something I don't I learned this in college, took a communications course in college. It's probably, out of 4 years of school, it's probably the one course that I use the most information from. It was like critical, or I don't know, it might have just been called like Communication 300 or something like that. I
Uh-huh.
don't know. And one of the big things it talked about was allowing there to be like time to respond. Like, just don't immediately give an answer. Like, stop. think, even if you think you already have the answer, like
Yeah.
think through it. And then I there's this lady on Instagram. I think she's called like the secure therapist. She has this whole thing about what type of relationship partner are you
Mhm.
and blah blah blah. And a big thing that she posted that I love, and it's like it's the same parallel. He said it's like these are the same thing, just being kind of put in different contexts. Like the old idea of like if you have something bad to say, write a letter, put it in your
Mhm.
desk, and then the next day mail it. For the younger crowd, mail is that you put a stamp on an envelope, a guy in a blue hat comes by, takes it, and then just somehow it ends up in somebody else's door. I don't know if he emails it, then the local PO prints it off and then puts it. I don't know how it does it, but they do it.
And for that crowd, a stamp is a small piece of paper that has some adhesive on one
I
side.
actually have stamps. Believe it
There you
right
go.
here. Believe it as a stamp. So so that was the old thought, right? And then it turned into email, right? Like if you have
Mhm.
a nasty email, write it. And I think I must apply. I don't know how many times I apply that a day, but like multiple times throughout the day because I have the other problem with me. I haven't listed the problem. The first problem with me is that I am incredibly sarcastic, incredibly, and I just sometimes I say it to be mean, like to actually get someone
Mhm.
sometime, but most of the time it's just like a joke. But half the time I'm like, okay, I need to like not use my quick brain. Like I need to engage the slow thinking brain a little bit here and just pause. And 90 it's so rare that those comments or whatever emails or messages, it's incredibly rare that they ever go out. But the reason I brought up the relationship thing is I I learned I do this with my wife as well. Is that I just if I have a problem and we're in an argument, I'm just like, you know what? I need to like stop. Like I'm gonna put this away in a vault. I'll open it tomorrow
Yeah.
when we're at breakfast and we'll figure it out there. But I think that for me, that's always been my like diffuser. It's just wait,
Yeah.
just let time come by.
And to find if in fact a lesson I wrote for myself. I have a little post-it note here that says bemused because what I'm trying to say to myself is when your mind is like searching for how to react, bemused is okay. Like you're a little amused by it, either bemused by yourself and your own reaction or bemused by the other person, but finding a way to remind yourself that okay, all right, this doesn't have to be so intense. It doesn't have to be a thing. Even if the other
Yep,
person is trying to make it a thing, and you can still hear them. Like you can let them vent. That doesn't mean you have to react to the venting. Um, I mean, you can over time. You could because sometimes lack of reaction can also be its own way of whacking the other person, like going down and
absolutely.
going silent. So it's like you can't abdicate. You do have to have a reaction, but you can choose. You can choose. So I'm choosing bemusement. Actually, I wrote this in preparation for this podcast with you. So
Oh,
I
okay.
will choose to not be offended by Nolan's sarcasm.
No,
Actually,
that was a good. I'm
the,
glad you wrote
the
a note
truth
for
is
that.
the truth is with you and I, we bonded over sarcasm. So
Yes.
um,
Yeah. It's our love language, Dan.
it's true, and
I know you don't want to hug me, but that's how we hug.
yeah,
We
yeah,
hug
it's
with little jabs.
game knows game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know we're close on time, but I want to. There's something that I thought you touched on that was, and like this idea of authenticity is important to
Yeah.
me because it was one of the better advices I've been given from somebody about my leadership style. And like my leadership style is sarcasm and humor and jokey and fun and things like that. And so what I realized, and I think about it, quite a bit because sometimes I think people get caught up with like, oh, well, this new wave of leadership is like we don't tell anybody that they're wrong, or we don't do this, that, and the other, or we're never having difficult conversations. What I found is like being authentic is like being funny and humor and care and empathy and like listening. And so like when I first started in leadership, I thought being a good leader was just listening. Like was just, taking it and like, okay,
Uh,
I'll just kind of take this in. But then I realized that like people actually want me to lead them. They don't just want me to listen to them. And so I realized that like if I could be, there's like something that is unique about me, and I have to find a way to like apply that in a way that works for people. And I think what happened is some people took all genuine reaction as truth and all genuine reaction is good. And it's really not.
Right.
Like I should not write, like just like you said, you're like, if I did that and you wrote it to me, I would find that funny because you and I have that banter, we have that dialogue, it's common for us. But sending it to them, you're like, "Hey, that was just clearly wrong. Like I shouldn't have done it." Was it authentically Dan? Yeah, maybe it was, but that doesn't make it right. And I think that also somehow got like pushed into this aura of like, "Well, we just can't say anything we want anymore." And it's like, "Well, absolutely you can." And like, and if you're somehow biting your tongue or holding your tongue, you're being inauthentic. And I don't subscribe to that at all. I think that's total bullcrap.
And I think that that's in alignment with, if we were going to say there is a new leadership, a new, for lack of a better phrase, a new, kinder, gentler, softer leadership. That may be true, but it's also hard. That kinder,
Yeah.
gentler, softer leadership that actually still produces results, that
Yeah.
where you can have a deeper, more meaningful relationship with people and be, I mean, directness is kindness.
Yeah.
Candor, candor presented respectfully is kindness. If somebody has a bad idea, if somebody is
Yeah.
going off in a misdirection, if somebody's thought process is actually not right or not, or at least from your point of view, being candid with that person is the kindest thing you can do, as long as you do it with kindness. Um, in fact, the most disrespectful thing you can do is just say, well, it looks like that train is headed down a track and there's going to be a little accident, coming
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can do is just say, oh, I guess I will let you figure it out, or I will let you learn your own lesson the hard way. Um, but I do think there's a bit of a battle for leadership where there's this forward moving approach that I tend to subscribe to, which is, um, find a way to matter very deeply to your business and to your people with a gentle touch, with a soft touch, with a very discerning touch.
Yeah.
But I do hear some leaders push against that to say, no, no, no. I need strong leadership that's going to make the hard calls, that's not going to listen to every voice in the room, that's going to be the voice in the room, that is going to have the ideas and drive. And I know we don't want to go very political, but I think of, do you remember there was that scene or that photo of Pete Hegseth when he brought every general and admiral
Hmm.
to the
Yeah.
Pentagon, had them all in the room, and then big-chested Pete Hegseth stood there to tell them what's what, tell them this
Yeah.
is the way
The
it is.
state of the,
And you
yeah.
had all of those flat faces, and I think he probably walked away from that feeling like he had done great because he told them what's what. He had been a leader. But I think there is still a segment of leaders who feel like that's the way to lead,
Well,
because woke versus anti-woke, sensitive versus
and that's
anti-sensitive.
what and that's what I mean is I feel like I'm not being a, I don't really know what you would call me, but like just because I care about somebody, that doesn't mean that I am not a great leader or I don't get the most from my team. And
Right.
it kind of goes back all the way back to what we said about, what you see online is like the most radical version of something. I am not a subscriber to like the radical version of like my people do it this way or they're fired, nor do I subscribe to the like, I'll never fire somebody
Mhm.
component either. Like, let's just give them more time. I think the right answer, like in all things, is the middle. And like, there's a time and place. Hey, we have a product we got to ship in 3 months. I need everybody on this boat rowing in the same direction. When I have the time to breathe, I'll actually tell you why. But right now, I just need hands on oars. And like I think that's where, but I think and that's why I say it's harder because I think the lazy leader always picks the same tool. They're like, oh, I know what to do. I'll just yell at my people. And that works really well. Like, it works if there's no way to push back, which in the
I,
example you described, there's no way for them to do anything. Or, if you pay really well, like, those people are going to stay as long as they're getting paid. And, like, that's a strategy. That's okay. That's for you. That's for you, right? If you want to pay people 3 times as much to deal with your antics,
Mhm.
right on you.
Although
But
I will
it's not going to
say
work the masses.
the most talented of all those people you're paying really well to keep them there, the most talented have the most options. So they will
That's true.
stay.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
will, and they'll be very conscious about it. I'm staying because of the opportunity, because of the
Exactly.
money.
And that's what I mean.
But then the moment there is more money or a better opportunity, they will move quickly and they will
Yeah.
have no loyalty, no
No.
connection to you. But the one thing that you said that I agree with so much is that if we call it that middle way, it's hard. It is the harder path because you have to figure out, it's like you have to consciously decide, what leader do they need today? Does this group
Yeah.
need from me? Do they need me to be the driver? Do they need me to be the
Mhm.
supporter? Do they need me to be the protector? Or sometimes the parent, sometimes the friend,
Yeah.
sometimes the strategist, sometimes the executor. Yes, that is hard, but I do think that's the future of leadership going forward. But those words are easy to say. I know how hard it is to evolve to be that kind of leader. There's a word. I have to search for it in my brain. There was the word that comes to mind is Proteus, and I believe Proteus was a Greek god who morphed into whatever kind of god he needed to be. I might be bastardizing this. Don't nobody beat up on me if I got Proteus wrong. But I think of that term as, yes, that's someone who can morph to, but in order to morph into this or this or this or this, you have to have those capabilities inside of you. That's that, and almost nobody has
Yeah.
that naturally. Almost everybody who gets to that has to intentionally develop themselves to be like, I am not, I'm going to go back. I am not naturally a bemused person. I
Yeah.
have to use post-it notes to remind me to be bemused. Otherwise, I just get pissed.
Yeah, and I'm naturally, say this all the time. I am not empathetic. I just am not. It does not come. And I tell people, I'm like, I'm not picking on like an emotion. I don't have, like, it's just not in me. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you don't have it. I don't have it. So game recognize game. No game. Don't
Yes.
recognize no game. Like, and so yeah, it is hard. It is really hard for me to sit down and say, oh, this. And thank God for my wife. Mm, I got to experience this much more with my wife every day, and that thankfully has, my employees should all donate flowers and gifts to my wife so that for the who I am today, at least.
Okay, so now you've 2 or 3 times said nice things about your
I'm
wife.
just
So
waiting for you. Yeah.
that's forcing me, because if I don't, now I will be in
Yes,
trouble if I
absolutely.
don't. But, and I mean this truly, she reads me better than anyone else and
Mhm.
gives me the kind of feedback that I just hate, but I need it so much. And that's the best feedback, where you're hoping for
Yeah.
validation, and
Yeah.
someone goes, not, not as wonderful as maybe you think. And then you have to,
Oh, good
I
on
go back and
her.
I stew for a bit, and then I settle down and I realize, yeah, okay, yep, you correct, got to evolve. And so then hopefully evolve. But that's the best kind of partner, somebody who
Yes.
sees more in you than you see in yourself, both good and challenging, and then helps you grow
Yeah.
continuously. So being respectful of time, I know we've got to wrap this up shortly, Nolan. What I appreciate about this, and you and I talked about this before this call, we didn't necessarily have a plan in
Mhm.
place, but I know you are a thoughtful leader. I know you're experiencing the world of work that many other people are experiencing. And the whole theme of this podcast is, over time, we have these kinds of conversations with people, and we're all kind of figuring it out. We're all eventually going to evolve to hopefully be, the kind of leader that our people need, that our businesses need. And it's not as simple as, okay, here are the 8 best practices. Just apply these and life will be better. That's very 70s, 80s, maybe 90s thinking. This is more about figure it out. The world is changing. The world is evolving. Hey, and maybe in the world of AI, maybe in the end, it's all going to be pointless because we will all work for Skynet.
Let's hope
Maybe,
not.
maybe.
Yeah.
But I think even AI, represents a sea change in leadership thinking, but we don't know what that really means yet. We have some inclinations, but anyway, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you just being authentic with us and sharing what's going on in your head. And I know we'll have an opportunity to do this again. Any final
Yeah,
thoughts
this
that
is
you wanted to
great.
share?
I don't know why it popped into my mind, but there was something that just came up, and it's something that I've thought about more about attractiveness levels. Is that the most attractive people are the people where their confidence level is just below their skill set. If they're at a
Nice.
9.5
Yeah.
on confidence, their skill is at a 10. And I think that if you can recognize where you are in that sphere as a leader, where is your confidence versus where is your skill? If you find yourself overconfident and underskilled, you need to go get that
Mhm.
skill because people can spot it. I mean, there's this guy, Post Malone, ugliest guy in the world, but drives females crazy because he's also the most talented dancer, singer, musician,
Mhm.
artist, and a genuinely good person. His confidence is really high, but his skill is a little bit higher. And
Yeah.
people recognize it. It's just their aura, it's their who they are. And I think as a leader, every now and then, I don't know why that came to mind. So that's why I was going to share it. But like, if you're a leader listening to this, next time you're kind of evaluating, am I over my skis? Think of that Post Malone parable.
Well, I so much appreciate the compliment, and I think it's a nice note to end on. So, thank you
That
for that
sounds good,
validation.
Dan.
All right,
Thank you.
see you later.
Thank.
Bye bye.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you. Bye.